The sky above Keltherin Prime burned with colors that should never exist in nature. Orange and red explosions bloomed like poisonous flowers across the orbital defenses, each one representing hundreds of lives, snuffed out in an instant. Researcher Velnus pressed her three-fingered hand against the transparent wall of the research facility and watched her world die. The Vraxian ships hung in orbit like metal predators, their dark hulls barely visible against the black of space, except when their weapons fired. Those weapons fired constantly now. Bright lances of energy descended from the heavens, turning cities into craters and forests into ash. The Keltherin had no way to fight back. They were a peaceful species, builders and artists and scientists. Their ships carried passengers and cargo, not weapons. Their technology healed and created. It did not destroy. "How long until the capital falls?" Velnus asked without turning away from the window. Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. Inside, she felt like screaming. Her assistant, Morven, checked the datapad with shaking hands. "The military council estimates 3 days. Maybe 4 if the underground shelters hold. But the Vraxians are targeting evacuation ships now. They want us to surrender, not escape." Velnus closed her large eyes for a moment. The Keltherin were herbivores, with eyes positioned on the sides of their heads to watch for danger. Right now, that evolutionary advantage felt like a cruel joke. They could see the danger perfectly well. They just could not stop it. The Vraxian Armada had arrived 2 weeks ago with a simple message: submit or die. When the Keltherin government refused to become slaves, the bombardment began. 43 cities had been reduced to rubble. 2 billion people were dead. The Vraxian commander did not care about Keltherin art or music or the beautiful biotechnology that could make plants grow in any environment. He only cared about conquest. Velnus turned away from the window and walked to the lower levels of the facility. Her team had been working around the clock on something that might be their only hope. It was a desperate plan, based on ancient technology that nobody fully understood. The artifact sat in the center of the research chamber, humming with power. It looked like a crystal pillar, 3 meters tall, covered in symbols that hurt to look at for too long. The Keltherin had discovered it 5 years ago during an archaeological dig on their moon. The symbols were not Keltherin. They were older, much older, created by someone who existed before the Keltherin had even invented agriculture. "Is it ready?" Velnus asked. Her lead engineer, Tethys, nodded. "We have managed to activate the primary systems. It appears to be some kind of quantum beacon, capable of sending messages across vast distances instantly. We found coordinates embedded in the programming, thousands of them, pointing to different star systems. And we are sure it is a distress beacon?" Tethys gestured to the symbols they had managed to translate. The primary message embedded in the system translates roughly to, "Call for help when the darkness comes." Whoever built this network expected that species would face extinction. They wanted to make sure someone would hear. Velnus felt a chill run down her spine. But who would answer? "We do not know any of these coordinates. They could point to dead worlds or hostile species or empty space. But we could point it at all of them," Morven suggested quietly. "Send the message everywhere at once. Hope that someone, anyone, will come." The building shook as another orbital strike hit somewhere nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered, but held. They did not have much time left. Velnus made her decision. "Do it. Send the message to every coordinate in the system. Tell them who we are. Tell them we are peaceful. Tell them we are dying and cannot fight back. Beg if you have to." Tethys and Morven worked quickly, programming the message into the ancient beacon. Velnus recorded the message herself, keeping her voice calm, even as more explosions rattled the facility. "To anyone listening, this is researcher Velnus of the Keltherin Collective. Our world is under attack by the Vraxian Armada. We are a peaceful people, with no military capability. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We cannot defend ourselves. If there is anyone out there who can hear this message, we beg you for help. These are our coordinates. This is our world. Please, if you have any mercy, any compassion, help us. We are dying. The beacon flared to life, brighter than the sun. Energy poured through it like water through a broken dam. The message shot out across the galaxy, traveling through quantum channels that ignored the normal rules of space and time. In an instant, it reached 1,000 worlds. Most of those worlds were dead or empty. Some were home to species that did not care about the problems of strangers. A few were inhabited by predators as bad as the Vraxians, who would see the message as an opportunity. But one message reached Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her office at Terran Fleet Command, reviewing deployment schedules. When the alert came through, a junior officer rushed in, datapad in hand, face pale with shock. "Admiral, we have received a quantum transmission. Origin is unknown, but the signal is incredibly strong. Someone is broadcasting a distress call, and they are using technology we have never seen before." Chen took the datapad and played the message. She watched the holographic recording of the Keltharan researcher, saw the fear hidden behind the calm voice, heard the desperation in the words. Behind Velnus, through the window, Chen could see the orbital bombardment in progress. "Analysis?" Chen asked. "The coordinates are real. A star system, about 3 weeks away at maximum FTL speed. Preliminary scans show a thriving civilization under attack by what appears to be a significant military force. The attackers match the profile of a species we have encountered before, the Vraxians, pirates, and slavers. Aggressive and territorial." Chen watched the message again. She thought about her own daughter, safe on Earth, growing up in a universe that seemed hostile at every turn. She thought about the early days of human space exploration, when they had been the weak ones, desperately hoping someone would help them against the predators in the dark. No one had come to help humanity. They had learned to help themselves. Built warships instead of explorer vessels. Trained soldiers instead of diplomats. But the memory of that fear, that helplessness, never quite faded. "How many ships can we mobilize in 72 hours? Chen asked. The junior officer blinked in surprise. "Admiral, the Council has not authorized any intervention. We do not have a treaty with these people. We have never even met them. I did not ask about authorization. I asked how many ships. Battle Group Retribution is currently at full readiness. 12 capital ships, 30 support vessels, 40,000 Marines. But Admiral, this could start a war." Chen stood up and walked to the window of her office, looking out at the orbital shipyards where human warships hung like sleeping giants. "It could," she agreed. "Or it could stop one. Prepare Battle Group Retribution for immediate deployment. I will handle the Council." 7. What should we tell the Keltharan? Chen smiled grimly. "Tell them to hold on. Tell them humanity is coming." 3 days later, Battle Group Retribution jumped to FTL, engines burning bright as they raced across the stars toward a world they had never seen. To save people they had never met, because someone had asked for help, and humanity remembered what it felt like to be helpless and alone in the dark. Commander Zethric stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fang, and watched the Keltharan homeworld burn below. It was beautiful in its own way, he thought. The orange glow of burning cities reflected off the clouds, the small explosions as their primitive defense satellites died, the desperate scattering of civilian ships trying to escape, only to be picked off by his destroyers. This was what the Vraxian Empire did best. They conquered. They dominated. They reminded the lesser species of the galaxy who held the power. "Status report," Zethric commanded, his voice a deep growl that made his bridge crew flinch. "The northern continent has completely surrendered, Commander. The southern continent continues to resist, but their military capability is 0. They are simply hiding in shelters. The eastern continent is attempting evacuations, but we are intercepting 90% of their ships. And the capital? Holding out in underground bunkers. But they cannot last more than a few days without surface access. Food supplies are running low. 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 Zethric nodded his massive head. The Vraxians were large, heavily built predators with thick armor plates covering their bodies and powerful jaws filled with teeth designed for tearing. They had evolved on a harsh world where only the strong survived, and they had carried that philosophy to the stars. 600 years of conquest had taught them that might made right. The Keltharan were weak. They had good technology, interesting biotechnology that the Empire could use, but they had no weapons, no warriors, no will to fight. In another few days, they would surrender completely, and the Keltharan would join the dozens of other species serving the Vraxian Empire. Commander, we have multiple contacts entering the system. Zethric turned to the sensor station. Identify them. Unknown configuration, sir. 12 large vessels, approximately carrier to battleship class, 30 smaller ships in support. They just came out of FTL at the system edge. Another species come to scavenge? Zethric laughed. This happened sometimes. Other predator species would see an opportunity to grab territory while the Vraxians were busy. It never ended well for them. Broadcast Standard Domination Protocol. The communications officer sent the message that had worked on 100 worlds. Attention unknown vessels. This system is now Vraxian territory. You are ordered to surrender immediately and present yourselves for processing. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. You have 1 cycle to respond. The reply came back in less than a minute. The voice was calm, flat, and spoke in perfect galactic standard, with an accent nobody on the bridge recognized. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Terran Fleet. You are ordered to cease your attack on the Keltharan immediately and withdraw all forces from this system. You have 1 hour to comply. This is your only warning. The bridge fell silent. Then, Zethric began to laugh. His officers joined in nervously. The deep, booming sound echoing through the ship. Terran? I have never heard of them. Check the database. The tactical officer worked quickly. Nothing, Commander. No records of any species calling themselves Terran or human. They must be a minor species from an unknown region. Zethric stopped laughing. They dare give us orders? They dare threaten the Vraxian Armada? He slammed his fist on the command console. Detach Squadron 7. 30 ships. Crush these insects. Bring me their commander alive if possible. I want to ask them why they thought they could challenge us. Squadron 7 broke off from the main armada and burned toward the unknown fleet at maximum speed. Zethric watched on the tactical display with satisfaction. 30 Vraxian warships against 12 unknown vessels. The outcome was certain. On board the human carrier Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the Vraxian squadron approach. Her tactical officer, Commander Rodriguez, shook his head. They are coming right at us. No fancy maneuvers, no attempt at strategy. Just straight ahead, at maximum speed. They are used to fighting civilians and inferior forces, Chen said quietly. They have forgotten what a real war looks like. Send the signal. Execute attack pattern Delta. Well, the human fleet had been preparing since they entered the system. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon was charged. Every pilot was ready. The Vraxian squadron closed to weapons range and opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missile swarms crossed the distance between the fleets. The human ships moved. They did not move like merchant vessels or exploration ships. They moved like predators, like sharks in water, with a grace and precision that spoke of constant training and combat experience. Point defense systems blazed to life, tracking and destroying incoming missiles with accuracy that should have been impossible. The ships rotated to present their heaviest armor toward the incoming fire. and that armor held against the Vraxian weapons. Then the humans fired back. Human railguns accelerated slugs to a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, traveling too fast for Vraxian sensors to properly track. The first Vraxian cruiser simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic energy that turned its armor into vapor and its interior into shrapnel. Human missile swarms launched, not dozens but hundreds, each missile equipped with limited AI that let it think and adapt. They swarmed around Vraxian point defenses, working together like a school of fish, until they found gaps in the coverage. Explosions bloomed across Vraxian hulls. Human strike craft poured from the carriers. Small, fast ships piloted by humans in G-suits that let them pull maneuvers that would kill most species. They dove through the Vraxian formation like angry hornets, firing armor-piercing torpedoes at close range before dancing away from return fire. Zethric watched in growing horror as his squadron died. 5 ships gone in the first minute. 10 ships, 3 minutes later. The human vessels barely had scratches. "What is happening?" he roared. "Their technology is comparable to ours, but their tactics are superior," his tactical officer said, voice shaking. "They fight like they have been at war for their entire existence. Every ship supports the others. They are not trying to trade blows. They are trying to win." A human destroyer performed something that should have been impossible. It jumped to FTL for just a fraction of a second, appearing behind a Vraxian battleship and firing directly into its engines before the Vraxian crew even knew it was there. "They can jump in a gravity well?" Zethric whispered. "That should destroy their ship." "Apparently not, sir." 15 minutes after engagement began, Squadron 7 was gone. 30 Vraxian warships, reduced to debris and distress beacons. The human fleet had taken damage, scorch marks and a few holes in armor, but not a single ship lost. Zethric stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 600 years of Vraxian expansion, no species had ever destroyed a full squadron so quickly. The human admiral's voice came over the communication channel again, still calm, still flat. "You have 45 minutes remaining. Withdraw now, or share their fate." Zethric felt rage replace his shock. "All ships, full attack formation. I want every vessel we have pressing the attack. I do not care what technology they have. We outnumber them 20 to 1. Crush them." On the surface of Keltharin Prime, in her damaged research facility, Velnus watched the battle through the telescopes. She saw the Vraxian Armada moving, leaving their bombardment positions to face this new threat. She saw the human ships, so few compared to the Vraxians, holding position and waiting. "They came," Morven whispered beside her. "Someone actually came. They are going to die," Velnus said, feeling tears on her face. "They came to help us, and they are going to die. There are too many Vraxians." But even as she said it, she watched the human fleet begin to move. And something in the way they moved made her wonder if the Vraxians truly understood what they were facing. The humans had not come to fight a battle. They had come to teach a lesson. And the Vraxians were about to learn what happened when you attacked someone under humanity's protection. The Armada accelerated toward the human fleet, every weapon charging, every ship eager to avenge their lost comrades. Commander Zethric prepared to show these Terrans why the Vraxian Empire ruled this sector of space. He had no idea that his Armada would be remembered as the force that announced humanity's arrival to the galaxy by dying in fire and screaming. The Battle of Keltharin Prime began in earnest when the full Vraxian Armada, 170 warships strong, accelerated toward the human fleet. On the bridge of the crushing Fang, Commander Zethric watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The humans had gotten lucky with Squadron 7, caught his ships by surprise, but now they would face the full might of the Vraxian Empire. "All batteries, prepare to fire on my command," Zethric ordered. "Concentrate fire on their capital ships. Once their flagships fall, the rest will break." Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the Vraxian fleet approach in a massive wall formation. It was intimidating, she had to admit. The sheer number of ships, all firing at once, would overwhelm most defenses through pure volume. But humans had not survived 2 centuries of space warfare by hoping for the best. They fight like they have never faced an equal opponent, Chen observed. All their tactics assume the enemy will break and run. Probably because they never have faced an equal, Commander Rodriguez replied. Every battle for 600 years has been against civilians or inferior forces. They have gotten lazy. Chen nodded. Then let us remind them what war actually looks like. Execute Battle Plan Omega. All ships, weapons free. Show them what Earth's children learned in the dark. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The heavy battleships and carriers formed the center, their massive armor and firepower ready to absorb the Vraxian assault. The cruisers and destroyers broke left and right, moving at high speed to flank the Vraxian formation. The Vraxians had numbers, but the humans had something more valuable: experience fighting against terrible odds. The Vraxian Armada opened fire first. Hundreds of energy beams and thousands of missiles screamed across space toward the human center. It was a devastating barrage, enough firepower to crack a planet. The human battleships took the hits, their shields flaring and armor buckling, but they held. Human engineers had built these ships to take punishment. Designed them knowing that humanity would always be outnumbered. Then the human ships returned fire, and the Vraxians learned the difference between suppressing civilians and fighting a military power. Human railguns fired in coordinated volleys, targeting the same spots on Vraxian shields until they collapsed. Human missiles did not just fly straight. They adapted, using limited AI to find weaknesses and exploit them. Human strike craft launched from the carriers in waves. 300 small ships, piloted by humans, who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The flanking cruisers and destroyers hit the sides of the Vraxian formation like hammers. The Vraxians had focused all their shields and armor forward, expecting a head-to-head slugging match. The human ships carved through the less protected flanks, their weapons tearing into Vraxian hulls at close range. Multiple breaches on the right flank. The Vraxian tactical officer shouted. "We are losing ships," Zethric snarled. "Rotate formation. Present armor to both flanks." But the Vraxians were not trained for complex maneuvers. Their formations were designed to overwhelm through brute force, not adapt to changing situations. As they tried to rotate, gaps opened in their defensive coverage. The human battle computers identified those gaps instantly, and weapons fire poured through them. A human destroyer, the Swift Justice, performed its signature move. The ship jumped to FTL for exactly 2 seconds, appearing directly in the middle of the Vraxian formation. Before the Vraxians could react, it fired every weapon in all directions and jumped away again. 3 Vraxian ships exploded from internal damage. 2 more collided, trying to evade the surprise attack. "Impossible!" Zethric roared. "You cannot jump in a gravity well. The ship should tear itself apart." His chief engineer pulled up data with shaking hands. "They have some kind of precision FTL system. Very short range, very dangerous. But it works. Our ships cannot do this." The human carriers launched their second wave of strike craft. These were not fighters but boarding pods, heavily armored dropships filled with human marines in powered combat suits. The pods streaked through the battle space, ignoring point defense fire through sheer armor, and slammed into Vraxian capital ships. Inside the Vraxian cruiser Blood Price, the crew barely had time to register the impacts before the human marines cut through the hull. The Vraxians were large, strong, and naturally armored. The humans were smaller and looked fragile, but the humans wore powered armor that enhanced their strength tenfold, carried weapons designed to punch through starship hulls, and fought with a coordination that suggested constant communication through their armor systems. The Vraxian crew fought hard. They were warriors, bred for combat. But they had never fought an enemy like this. The humans moved through the ship like a precision instrument, targeting specific systems, taking control of key areas, and using the ship's own layout against its crew. Within 20 minutes, the Blood Price was a human-controlled vessel. Its Vraxian crew either dead or surrendered. This scene repeated across a dozen Vraxian ships. The humans did not just want to destroy the Armada. They wanted to capture it, study it, and learn everything about the Vraxian military. On the surface of Keltherin Prime, Velnus and her team watched the battle with growing amazement. The night sky was filled with explosions and weapons fire. The Vraxian ships, which had seemed so unstoppable, were dying in dozens. The human fleet moved through them like a blade through soft tissue. "I do not understand," Morven said quietly. "They are outnumbered badly. How are they winning?" Tethys, the engineer, studied the tactical data they were receiving from the research facility's sensors. "Look at their firing patterns. Every shot is calculated. They are not wasting ammunition. And their formation? It is designed for mutual support. Each ship covers the weaknesses of the others. This is not a merchant fleet that learned to fight. This is a military that was built for war." "But why?" Velnus asked. "Why would a species develop such military power if they are willing to help strangers?" "Perhaps," Tethys said slowly, "they built this military because nobody helped them. Perhaps they learned to fight because they had to, and now they use that strength to help others." In space, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Vraxian Armada had lost over 80 ships. Another 40 were damaged or captured. Only 50 ships remained in fighting condition, and Commander Zethric could see the fear in his crew's eyes. They had never experienced defeat before. A human cruiser suddenly appeared directly in front of the crushing Fang, having performed another impossible micro-jump. It did not fire. Instead, a message came through on all channels. "Commander Zethric, this is Admiral Chen. You have lost. Your armada is broken. You can order your remaining ships to retreat now, or I can finish what we started. Choose, quickly." Zethric looked at his tactical display. 50 ships left from 170. The humans had lost only 3 ships, with several others damaged but still functional. This was not a battle anymore. It was an execution. His pride wanted to fight to the last ship. His survival instinct was screaming at him to run. "All ships," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Disengage and retreat. Jump to emergency coordinates." The remaining Vraxian ships broke formation and fled. Their FTL drives tearing holes in space as they escaped the system. The human fleet did not pursue. They had made their point. Admiral Chen watched them go and allowed herself a small smile. "Secure all captured vessels. Send medical teams to assist with Vraxian wounded. And someone please tell the Keltharan that it is safe to come out now." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Rodriguez was already compiling the battle report. Total losses: 3 destroyers, 1 cruiser heavily damaged. Casualties: 214 dead, 400 wounded. Enemy losses: over 160 ships destroyed or captured. And the Keltharan? The bombardment has stopped. Their cities are damaged but intact. Preliminary estimates suggest we saved approximately 4 billion lives. Chen nodded slowly. 4 billion people who would have died if humanity had not answered that desperate call. 4 billion people who would grow up knowing that someone came when they called for help. Begin recovery operations, and send a message to Earth. Tell them we won. Tell them Battle Group Retribution has completed its mission. As the human fleet began securing the system and helping the Keltharan survivors, word of the battle started spreading across the galaxy. It traveled through trade routes and communication networks, growing more dramatic with each retelling. The story of how an unknown species had appeared from nowhere, destroyed the Vraxian Armada, and saved an entire civilization. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a new power among the stars. A species that built weapons capable of challenging empires, but used them to protect the weak instead of conquering them. Humanity had announced its presence in the most dramatic way possible, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 weeks after the battle, Keltharin Prime was slowly healing. Human medical ships orbited the planet, their advanced equipment helping to treat the wounded. Human engineers worked alongside Keltharin builders to restore power grids and water systems. Human soldiers stood guard at shelters, protecting the vulnerable while the planet rebuilt. Researcher Velnus stood in the landing area outside her research facility and watched the human shuttle descend from orbit. She had requested this meeting personally, wanting to thank the people who had saved her world. But she was also nervous. The humans were predators. Every biological scan confirmed it. Forward-facing eyes for tracking prey. Omnivorous teeth, including canines for tearing meat. Dense muscle structure built for endurance hunting. On any evolutionary scale, they were apex predators. The shuttle landed with a gentle hiss of hydraulics. The door opened, and Admiral Chen stepped out, flanked by 2 Marines in dress uniforms. Velnus was surprised by how small they seemed. The Vraxians had been huge, towering over Keltharin. Humans were closer to Keltharin height, perhaps a bit taller but not intimidatingly so. Admiral Chen approached and stopped a respectful distance away. "Researcher Velnus, thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Velnus felt her translator device working, converting the human's words into Keltharin speech. "Admiral Chen, thank you for coming. Thank you for everything. You saved my world." Chen smiled. A slight movement of her lips that Velnus's studies told her was a friendly expression in human culture. "You asked for help," we answered. "That is what decent people do." "But why?" Velnus blurted out. "You did not know us. You had no treaty with us. You risked your ships and your people for complete strangers. Why would you do that?" Chen was quiet for a moment, looking up at the sky where repair work continued on the orbital stations. "Because we have been where you are," she said finally. "When humanity first went to the stars, we were like you, peaceful, curious, hoping to find friends. Instead, we found predators. Pirates who attacked our colonies. Raiders who stole our resources, hostile species who saw us as weak. But you learned to fight," Velnus said. "We had no choice. Nobody came to help us. We learned to help ourselves, to build weapons and train soldiers. We became good at war because the alternative was extinction." Chen looked back at Velnus. "But we never forgot what it felt like to be helpless. When we heard your message, we knew we had to come. We had to come. Because we could. Because it was right." Velnus felt tears forming in her eyes. "You lost people. In the battle, 200 of your soldiers died saving us. 214, Chen corrected gently. "And yes, they died. But they died doing something good. They died protecting people who could not protect themselves. There is honor in that." Over the following days, Velnus met more humans. She toured the human medical ships and watched doctors and nurses treating Keltharin patients with care and gentleness. She visited the human marine barracks and was shocked to see soldiers playing with Keltharin children, sharing candy and stories. She met engineers who worked 20-hour days helping to rebuild power stations, refusing to rest while Keltharin were still without electricity. One meeting stood out particularly. Velnus was visiting a hospital when she encountered a human marine named Sergeant Williams. The sergeant was missing her left arm, lost during a boarding action against a Vraxian cruiser. She sat in the recovery ward, watching Keltharin children draw pictures of the battle. "Sergeant Williams," Velnus said hesitantly. "May I speak with you?" The sergeant looked up and smiled. "Of course. You are the one who sent the message, right? The SOS? Yes. I activated the beacon. I called for help, never believing anyone would come." Velnus sat down carefully. "You lost your arm, saving us. You lost friends. Was it worth it? Williams was quiet for a long moment. My squad boarded the Vraxian flagship. We took heavy casualties. My best friend, Corporal Martinez, died right next to me. Took a plasma bolt meant for me. She looked down at her missing arm. And yeah, I lost this. It hurts like hell, and I will never be a combat marine again. Then how can you say it was worth it? Williams pointed at the children drawing pictures. Because they are alive. Because their parents are alive. Because this world still exists. She turned to look at Velnus directly. Before we deployed, Admiral Chen told us what we were doing. She said we were going to save a civilization. She said some of us might not come home. Every single Marine volunteered anyway. Because that is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. Velnus could not hold back her tears. I do not understand your species. You are predators. Evolution should have made you selfish and cruel. But you are not. Humans are complicated, Williams said with a slight laugh. Yes, we are predators. But we are also social animals. We survived not by being the strongest, but by working together, by taking care of our own, by building communities. She gestured around. We just have a very big definition of our own now. You called for help. That made you one of ours. Meanwhile, in a secure research facility, human archaeologists and Keltheran historians were studying the ancient beacon together. Dr. James Park, a human expert in xenoarchaeology, worked alongside Tethys to decode the beacon's full programming. This is incredible, Park said, staring at the holographic display of the beacon's network. There are thousands of these beacons across the galaxy, all connected through quantum entanglement. Whoever built this was incredibly advanced. Tethys nodded enthusiastically. We believe they were called the Architects, a precursor species that existed at least 1 million years ago. We have found ruins of their civilization on several worlds, but never technology this functional. And the purpose was specifically to call for help during extinction events? That appears to be the primary function, yes. The architects seem to have believed that civilizations should help each other survive. They built this network to ensure that anyone facing extinction could call out, hoping someone would answer. Park smiled sadly. They built a system based on hope. Hope that someone out there would care enough to help strangers. He looked at Tethys. Your message reached us. But did any others answer? No, Tethys admitted. We sent the message to over 1,000 coordinates. Only Earth responded. And maybe the other coordinates are dead worlds now, or maybe other species heard and chose not to help. Park shook his head. Either way, I am glad humanity answered. As the weeks passed, Admiral Chen and her staff worked on establishing formal relations with the Keltheran. But they also noticed something interesting. Other species were paying attention to what had happened. Admiral, we are receiving messages from other governments, Commander Rodriguez reported. 12 species so far have sent diplomatic inquiries. They want to know about humanity. They want to know about our military capabilities. And several are asking if we would consider mutual defense treaties. Chen raised an eyebrow. They watched us destroy the Vraxian Armada and now they want to be friends? Some are prey species like the Keltheran, looking for protection. Others are predator species, but pragmatic ones. They do not want to end up like the Vraxians. Rodriguez pulled up a tactical map. The Vraxian Empire is in chaos. Conquered worlds are rebelling. Their military is scared to leave their core territories. One battle, and we changed the entire political landscape of this sector. Chen studied the map thoughtfully. We cannot protect the entire galaxy. We do not have the ships or the people. But we could build a coalition, species working together for mutual defense. The Keltheran could contribute their biotechnology. Others could contribute resources or different technologies. Humanity would provide military expertise and coordination. A defensive alliance, Chen mused, built around the principle that peaceful species deserve protection from predators. She smiled. I like it. Draft a proposal. We will call it the Beacon Alliance, in honor of the system that brought us here. On the day Admiral Chen prepared to return to Earth, Velnus met with her one last time. They stood at the memorial that the Keltharan had built. A beautiful sculpture showing a human and a Keltharan with their hands clasped, reaching toward the stars. What does the inscription say? Chen asked. Velnus read it aloud. They heard our cry and came from the darkness. May we never forget that the measure of a civilization is not in its weapons, but in its willingness to help the helpless. That is beautiful. It is the truth, Velnus said simply. You came when we called. You fought when we could not. You stayed to help us rebuild. Humanity will always be remembered on Keltharan Prime as the species that proved kindness and strength can exist together. Chen felt unexpected emotion welling up. We will not abandon you. Earth is proposing a formal alliance. Humanity will help protect Keltharan's space. In return, we hope to learn from your technology and culture. We are stronger together. The Beacon Alliance, Velnus said, having been briefed on the proposal. We accept. Let us build something better than empires of conquest. Let us build a community of protection. As Chen's shuttle lifted off, heading back to the Indomitable, she reflected on what had happened. Humanity had come to this system, expecting a battle. They had found something more, a purpose, a reason for all the weapons and warships they had built. The galaxy was full of predators. But now, it also had guardians. And the message was spreading across the stars. If you call for help, if you stand against tyranny, humanity will answer. The SOS had reached humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Keltharan Prime, and the galaxy was changing in ways nobody had predicted. In the council chambers on Earth, representatives from 14 different species gathered for the formal signing of the Beacon Alliance Charter. Researcher Velnus stood among them, now serving as the Keltharan ambassador to Earth, watching history being made. Admiral Chen, recently promoted to Fleet Admiral and appointed as the Alliance's military coordinator, addressed the assembly. 6 months ago, one species called for help, and humanity answered. Today, we make that answer permanent. Any species under attack, any civilization facing extinction, can activate their beacon. The Alliance will respond. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is our promise to the galaxy. The representatives signed the charter one by one. Velnus watched species who had never met before coming together, united by a simple principle. Might should protect right, not enforce it. The Keltharan were there, of course, along with the humans, but others had joined too. The Minari, a species of aquatic beings whose water worlds had been raided by pirates for decades, signed eagerly. The Tholes, peaceful insectoids who had barely survived an invasion attempt, added their mark. The Kentari, nomadic traders who had lost colony after colony to aggressive expansion, signed with visible relief. Even 2 predator species joined, the Krell Dominion and the Nethrak Collective, both pragmatic military powers who recognized that the old ways of conquest were becoming too dangerous. We are not the strongest species individually, Velnus said when it was her turn to speak, but together, we become something greater. The Vraxians conquered because they were strong, and we were weak alone. But we are not alone anymore. After the ceremony, Velnus found herself in a private meeting with Admiral Chen and representatives from the Krell Dominion. High Commander Grask of the Krell was an impressive sight, a reptilian warrior nearly 3 meters tall with scales that looked like natural armor. The Krell had a reputation as fierce fighters, and Velnus was nervous. Ambassador Velnus, Grask said, his voice surprisingly gentle despite his appearance. I wanted to speak with you personally. The Krell Dominion wishes to apologize for not answering your distress call. We received it, along with many others. We chose not to respond. Velnus was shocked. You heard our call? But you did nothing? We assumed it was a trap or that the situation was hopeless, Grask admitted, looking ashamed. The Vraxian Armada was formidable. We calculated that intervention would cost too many Krell lives for people we did not know. We were wrong. Not about the danger, but about the calculation. Humanity showed us that some things are worth risking lives for. Admiral Chen spoke up. The Krell have excellent military training and ship designs. Their warriors are among the best in the galaxy. That is why we want them in the Alliance. Not despite being predators, but because they are. We need strength to protect the weak. But can we trust them? Velnus asked directly. Grask nodded respectfully at the question. A fair concern. The Krell have conquered in the past, but we have watched what happened to the Vraxians. They attacked a peaceful species, and humanity destroyed them for it. The lesson is clear. The galaxy has changed. Conquest is no longer profitable or safe. Better to join something constructive than to become humanity's next example. It was brutally honest, and Velnus appreciated that. So you join out of pragmatism, not idealism? We join out of survival instinct, Grask corrected. But perhaps in time, we will learn to join out of genuine care for others. Humanity seems to believe that predators can be more than conquerors. We would like to prove them right. 2A. Across the galaxy, the effects of the Alliance were spreading. The Vraxian Empire had fractured. Commander Zethric, stripped of all rank and exiled, lived on a remote station and obsessively studied reports about humanity. His people saw him as the fool who had awakened a sleeping giant. But Zethric understood something others were still learning. He pulled up the classified reports his former intelligence officers had sent him. Everything they had learned about Earth and its history. The planet was classified as a death world by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous megafauna, and diseases that would kill most species. Humans had evolved in that hell, competing with creatures stronger and more dangerous than themselves. They learned to cooperate because they had to, Zethric muttered to himself. Reading the reports. They learned to plan because strength alone was not enough. They learned to use tools and technology because they were not the apex predator naturally. Everything about them is adaptation to being weak. But that adaptation had made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They fought like prey animals, with the cunning of predators, using coordination and tactics that other species had never developed. And they had turned that strength toward protection instead of conquest. Zethric received a message from his former second-in-command, still serving in what remained of the Vraxian military. Commander, you should know that the Beacon Alliance is activating more beacons. 3 species have called for help in the last month. Human ships responded to all 3. They are building a network of protected worlds. Zethric closed his eyes. The galaxy was reorganizing around humanity's principle. Help those who call for it. Species were learning that they did not have to face extinction alone. The old empires, built on conquest and domination, were becoming obsolete. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Chen reviewed reports of the latest beacon activation. The Vorsil, a peaceful species of plant-based beings, were under attack by slavers. The nearest Alliance ships were already jumping to FTL, heading to their system. This is the 4th activation this month, Commander Rodriguez noted. We are stretching our forces thin. Then we build more ships and recruit more members, Chen replied. Every species we save becomes part of the Alliance. Every species that joins adds their resources and ships to our mutual defense. We grow stronger. With each call, we answer. Some critics on Earth are saying we are becoming the galaxy's police force, that we are taking on too much responsibility. Chen smiled. We are not police. Police enforce laws. We are guardians. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. There is a difference. She pulled up a holographic display of the beacon network. The architects built this system 1,000,000 years ago, hoping someone would use it to save civilizations. We are finally making their dream real. On Keltheran Prime, the planet had recovered remarkably. New cities rose where old ones had been destroyed, incorporating both Keltheran biotechnology and human engineering. Hybrid designs that were stronger and more efficient than either species could create alone. Children played in parks, where human Marines once fought to protect them. Memorials stood in public squares, honoring both Keltheran victims and human soldiers who had died in their defense. Velnus returned home for a visit and walked through the research facility where she had activated the beacon. The artifact still stood in its chamber, humming with power. Tethys was there, working with human and Krell scientists to understand the full beacon network. We have mapped over 2,000 beacons, Tethys reported excitedly. Some are in inhabited systems. Some are on abandoned worlds. The architects spread them everywhere, hoping to create a web of mutual assistance across the entire galaxy. Have we found any trace of the architects themselves? Nothing conclusive. They vanished 1,000,000 years ago. But their technology endures, and their philosophy is finally being realized. Species helping species. Strength used to protect rather than conquer. Velnus placed her hand on the beacon, feeling its warmth. I was terrified when I activated this. I thought we would die alone, unnoticed by an uncaring galaxy. Instead, we found humanity. We found hope. And now that hope is spreading, Tethys said. Every activation of a beacon sends a message. You are not alone. Someone will come. Someone will help. 2 months turned into a year. The Beacon Alliance grew to 23 member species. Human shipyards worked around the clock, building new vessels and training mixed crews from different species. The Keltheran contributed their biotechnology, creating living armor that could repair itself and environmental systems that could support multiple species. The Krell contributed their warrior training programs, teaching Alliance Marines tactics developed over centuries of warfare. Other species added their own unique contributions. Minari underwater combat techniques, Thol hive mind coordination, Kentari navigation expertise. The old empires watched nervously. Some, like the Vraxians, were too weakened to pose a threat. Others began tentatively reaching out, asking about membership requirements. A few hostile species continued their aggressive expansion, but they were becoming isolated as more and more systems joined the alliance for protection. In a surprising development, several member species began sharing their beacon coordinates with others. The network was expanding, not through conquest, but through invitation. Species wanted to be part of something that valued cooperation over domination. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the new Alliance headquarters, a massive station built in neutral space between member worlds. She watched ships from a dozen different species docking, crews working together, preparing to answer the next distress call. Velnus joined her, now promoted to Alliance Council representative. Do you ever wonder if we are moving too fast, building something too ambitious? Chen considered the question. Every day. But then I remember why we started this. Because one species called for help, and we answered. Because it was the right thing to do. That principle has not changed, even as everything else has. The galaxy is not safe yet, Velnus observed. There are still predators out there. Still empires that rule through fear. No, the galaxy is not safe. But it is safer than it was. And every day, it gets a little safer. As more species join us, and more beacons are activated. The architects built this network hoping someone would use it. We are giving it purpose. An alert chimed. Another beacon had activated, somewhere on the far side of the galaxy. A species called the Yulani. facing invasion by a neighboring empire. The council was already mobilizing, ships preparing to jump, Marines checking their equipment. Velnus smiled. They called for help. And we will answer, Chen replied. Because that is what we do. That is what the Alliance does. Someone calls, and we come. Simple as that. As Alliance ships prepared to jump to FTL, heading toward another desperate species on the edge of extinction, the message continued to spread across the galaxy. If you need help, call. Someone will answer. You are not alone in the dark. The predators may be strong, but the guardians are stronger. The SOS had reached humanity 6 months ago. Now, humanity was ensuring that no SOS would ever go unanswered again. The Vraxians had paid the price for their aggression, but they had taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. There was a new power among the stars, one that fought not for territory or resources, but for principles. And that power was just getting started. The beacon network hummed across the galaxy, waiting for the next call, knowing that this time, someone would definitely be listening.